AP Hug students, here's your second video for your first chapter, and unfortunately your last video for your first chapter. Alright, here's what we're going to talk about. These three main ideas: globalization, distribution, and diffusion. And we're going to focus on these three items and reflect on the question, why are different places similar? Alright, and it's because of these three reasons. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Alright, so globalization. Well, globalization, if you want to look at it as this, it's the integration of societies, right? How the United States relates to China, and how China relates to India, and how India relates to France, and how France relates to Russia, so on and so forth, right? It's this interrelationship. And globalization is made easier through the space-time compression. What that is, it's a reduction of the time it takes for something, like information or an object, let's say, to reach another place. Well, we talked about this in class. Technology is this main proponent. Think about radio. Right? You can listen to radio almost anywhere, especially think about the app iHeartRadio, right? You can listen to Z100 all the way in Texas if you like. Think about television. Television stations are broadcasted all over the world. Think about the internet. Very easy for information to be disseminated through, and trade, etc., so on and so forth. There's so much more, and we'll talk about it in class. Let's keep going here. So distribution, right? What distribution is this? It's the arrangement of a feature in a given space. That could be a house. That could be a factory. That could be railroad systems. That could be subways. All right. It's all these different things and how they're arranged in a space. It could be that they're close together, or that they're far apart, right? This cluster dispersed, or that they just show up frequently in a given area. Let's say in a mile radius, or let's say in a 10,000 kilometer radius, so on and so forth. All right, there are three main properties of distribution, and I want you to think of these properties as dots. All right, and I'll get into that dot theory in a second. So what is density? Well, it's a frequency in which something occurs in space. If you look to your right here, this picture, well, that's a lot of houses in a given space. Now, they look very close together. So we always think that density means that there's something close together. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that there is a X amount of, let's say, houses within a mile radius, or that there is an X amount of cars within a country, okay? It's just the amount of something that occurs within a given space. Concentration is often what people think of when they hear density, and that's how clustered or close something is, or dispersed or far apart it is. So, for example, you see these highway systems, they're very clustered, they're very concentrated together. But if we were to look at, let's say, highways within a given mile radius, we could then determine the frequency in which those occur. And last thing we have is pattern. What I mean by pattern, I literally mean how objects are arranged, okay? So the best example I give you is grid system for cities, right? Think of New York, it's on a grid system. If you look at this picture here, that's a grid system. As well as many condos, they develop a pattern. Think of farmland. Farmlands can develop patterns as well. All right, lots of different examples. All right, let's go to this dot theory here, this density versus concentration. If you look at this picture, which one is more highly concentrated, or which one is more clustered versus dispersed? Okay, clustered to the right, dispersed to the left. I'm talking about concentration. Now let's focus on density. All right, how many of these occur within this given space, literally within the drawn space? If you actually count them up, it's the exact same. So the frequency of these dots is exactly the same. The concentration is that one is clustered to the right and one is dispersed to the left. Keep in mind this dot theory, okay? We'll keep it going. All right, so what is diffusion? Diffusion is the process of how characteristics spread from one place to another, right? So these ideas usually start within something called a hearth or an origin, right? Think of the ice bucket challenge. It started in the hearth, let's say the ALS community. All right, it spread out through there. Think about religion. Think about the Islamic religion where it started in Mecca and spread from there. That's a hearth, all right? And the process by which the ideas flow from is diffusion. Let's get into some specific examples. All right, there are really two types of diffusion. One is relocation diffusion, okay? And this is the spread of an idea like physically from one place to another, right? And the best example I give you is culture, right? Let's say somebody, for example, comes over from a different country into America and spreads their culture. They literally take it from one place to another. Same with language. Here are some other examples that you might not have thought of. How about currency, right? Taking currency from one location to the other. How about disease? How about food, right? Sushi is another great example. Taking a cultural aspect from one place and literally physically moving it to another. Now, the other type of diffusion is expansion diffusion, right? And it includes three other types of diffusion within this one. So what is expansion diffusion? All right, it's just an idea that spreads very, very quickly, right? They call it a snowballing process. It speeds up. It starts very small and then gathers a lot of people behind it, let's say. One example is hierarchical diffusion. Just think of somebody higher up in society or an authoritative person, all right? Now, Let's think of, for example, healthcare reform with President Obama. That's one example. Or the ALS, you could consider a top-ranking organization within society. And they started the trend of the Ice Bucket Challenge. All right, let's go to contagious diffusion. And I just want you to make sure that contagious diffusion is like the spread of disease. It is not actually the spread of disease, okay? Just think of it as rapid, widespread circulation of an idea. Religion is one perfect example. Think of missionaries, okay? Religion is a great example. In the prevention of a disease, the idea of it can be considered contagious diffusion, such as the AIDS prevention, such as the flu prevention, so on and so forth. And the last but not least, we have stimulus diffusion, okay? And this is the spread of an underlying principle. Let's think of some ideas here. Think of McDonald's. The idea of McDonald's, okay, from one country to another is great. But let's say when they go to a different country and they don't eat, let's say, cheeseburgers every day, okay, or they can't eat meat. Well, McDonald's, the main idea is there, but then now all of a sudden another idea transforms and might replace it, such as vegan food or such as, non-dairy food over in a different country. Okay, guys, that was it. We'll focus on a lot of these examples throughout class. If you have any questions, please ask. I will see you in class.